Welcome to Paragons and Outliers. My name is Vaina.
Ready or not. Ready or not. Here I come. Can't hide. Gonna find you and then
All right, so now if you ask me, I think that women are the creme de la creme, that we are the gift to the world. If you never knew, now you do know. I believe that the very essence and foundation of our being needs to be internalized and received from a higher plane, right? And I believe that because the world, I mean, when we look at the Bible talks about Eve and how Eve is the one who introduced the apple. The Bible talks about Sarah, in her disbelief. The Bible talks about Jezebel and, her beauty and how she wielded her power and her strength. When in all actuality, yes, we do. We overfill sometimes. We overlove. We overcondition ourselves from so many things, but we sometimes are diminished from within inside of us, not necessarily understanding how we need to operate inside the world, because the world has told us that our innate nature is going to be the betraying factor. And I want us to get out of that stance. I want us to see ourselves slightly differently. But I think that first, before we do that we actually have to heal. We have to heal from the way that we have abused our own self, and we have to heal from the way that we've allowed the world to impose itself upon us. And so let's venture down this avenue and this path together. So who are we as women? Who are we without pre-programming? So I think that from the time, like in our authentic self as women or as girls, females, that, before the age of 5, we are effervescent. We are everything sugar, everything spice. But then we are groomed and conditioned, to a standard, or we are left to our own whims. And what I say is that a lot of times, because we are women, we are actually pre-programmed to want to feel, to fill with our emotions, to make decisions based on those. And because we're not only the homemakers any longer. So there was once upon a time when we could allow our feelings and our emotions to kind of dictate the path, because we were the housewife. We were the mother, the soccer mom. We weren't expected to get out here, roll up our sleeves, and get duke out the best of it with the best of the men. Now, it's competition in the world, man against woman, woman against man, equal to equal, unequal to the possibilities, right? And what I found is that, in our determination to take our stance and to assert ourselves, that I believe that we started filling voids, that we lost the very effervescence of who it is that we are. And I want us to kind of get that back, because we can wear the skirt and the pants, but we shouldn't necessarily really want to, per se. We want to keep our buoyancy. We want to keep our femininity. We want all of it to be able to show up. But the world tells us to hide it. And the way that it has done that, and I don't want to be negative, but when we look at the Bible and we look at Eve, right? We look at the perception of Eve. Then we see Sarah. And Sarah is shunned because, she laughs. She's like, what, I don't have time for this mess, right? So she's the doubter. Then when we look Tamar. Tamar is kind of done wrong, but the way that Tamar is presented, in her get back is not complimentary towards women. And so I want to say that we could be pre-programmed into the way that we view ourselves and not even really realize that we have adopted a view from an outside source and internalize that for ourselves. And so no longer do we show up as our authentic self. We already show up on the defense. No longer do we feel comforted within understanding that the very thing that we possess is actually the gift of the earth. So no longer are we saying that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, right? We call the one that rules the world Jezebel now. Like our authority is undermined by the masses. And so I want us to be in that place of where we understand that we can be all things at all times and still live in our authentic self and not have to apologize or be ashamed of it. Now, let me say this. The way that you are showing up is the most important thing. I don't care if you are scared out of your britches. I don't care if you feel like you are the ugly duckling in the room full of swans. I don't care if, individuals, you are in environments that are prone to body shaming. I want to say that the way that you feel about yourself is the thing that actually, the energy that speaks for you before you even open your mouth. And though we don't want to be arrogant or come off as cocky or come off as, too conceited about ourselves, we do actually want to show up in a way that actually says that I am here, I am fierce, and I am not vulnerable or susceptible to the thoughts and the opinions of others. And I say that, and I say it gently, because a lot of times we don't know that individuals either benefit from our energy, they consume our energy, or they want to smother or dominate our energy. And I'll try to give you examples of each. So when we are looking out into the world and the world is then looking into us to receive us, we want to show up as that better person, confident in saying that I know who I am. I know how I want to be loved. I know how I want to be treated. I know how to treat you. So not only do I know how to love, but I know how to receive love. Not only do I know how to respect, but I know how to respect, right? So not only do I know how to respect, but I know how I need to be respected. And so as we are journeying forward, when we have that kind of confidence to say that I don't necessarily need you to define me, that what you bring is going to be something that is a compliment to who it is that I am, but it is not something that is actually going to validate or be something that I need in order to thrive. So I don't have to pull from your energy in order to be re-energized, but I actually come with my own flow and my own vibrance and the things that I know that I want and the things that I know that I need. And so because I don't have to second guess or try to figure out what it is that I want, being confident in what it is that I want or need, I can then actually spend more time getting to know the people that are closest to me or around me. All right, so not only are we to be the helper, but we also have to understand that we need to be helped. I think that because many women from a young age, I know in my household, the boys were kind of like boys and expected to be boys, and the girls had their role and it were expected to be girls. And so I honestly grew up, I thought that every household had this. My dad and my stepmother, my dad let her come out of work to take care of me. He worked and she paid, he came home with the check, she paid the bills, supposedly was supposed to be cleaning and all that other stuff like that. And he was working and coming home to his meal and, being in conversation with his family and then like going on. I thought that, we had polar opposite dynamics, that we complemented each other, but that we didn't kind of have equality with each other. And so I do have the experience of my single mother, or my single grandmother after, her partner went on. Where, she was the same. We have 4-course meals, right? But then when they were single, the struggle of life, and being the individual responsible for other individuals, right? They had a different type of struggle or a different type of song and dance about life in general. And so I have the diversity of actually seeing both types of households function and to be able to see what added to them and what subtracted from them. And what I can say is that in all of our purity, that we don't necessarily want to believe that our assignment is to battle the world in a way that the men battle the world. We have to come from a different perspective and a different stance. I hope that makes sense to somebody. The way that you are perceived, I believe that it from, again, stemming from even as early as biblical text, that women have been perceived as something, and so we have adopted that amongst ourselves, not understanding that we have both sugar and spice and everything nice. And that because the dynamic is polarized on one side or aspect, that we don't necessarily have to go through and fight for our station and our stance in life, but that because we are actually the nurturers of the earth, that we actually set the tone and the precedence for who it is and what it is that who it is that we are and what it is that we want. So I often say, Michelle said, you can't raise a man. And I would say that, our greatest assignment is actually as mothers. Whereas then we have had to partner with ourselves, some of us, right? In order to be everything to everybody in our household, wearing, both pant and skirt. And then when we walked out into the world, wearing our pant and our skirt, the world is like, she's too much, it's too much energy coming along and whatever else. We can't adopt that. We have to understand that in, our very nature, that we are not hunter in spirit. That in our very nature that we are loyal, in spirit, that we are nurturing in our spirit, that we are caring in our experience of being a woman. But the conditioning of the earth has had us take a different type of stance and to show up slightly differently. And so we don't necessarily, we have our peacock feathers and we're strutting them, to make sure that for survival's sake, that we are in a position to survive. And so we are in a position to survive. I want us to kind of understand the pretense of this, because in that showing up, those of us who have been injured or maimed in life by life itself, that sometimes the energy or the life that we've experienced actually shows up in our present form, not understanding that we're like, bag lady, you gon' miss your bus, right? Dragging all them bags like that. Well, I guess somebody should have told you, right? All you must hold on to is you. And so we want to make sure that we're not carrying, those wounds, those open, exposed things that have, scabs, and picking them, and so that they are reformed. Not that we're all broken. I think that life is actually great and grand for many of us, right? But then there is that group that are really coming through difficult times, and I see that. But I think that because we are trained or programmed to be silent, to be strong, straighten up, suck it up, right? And get right back into the fight, that we don't never take the time to internally internalize and to make sure that we are actually doing what we need to do in order to prepare ourselves, not only for the next week or the next year or the lifetime, but just for the next moment. The darker side of the experience, so understand how you show up. So we can have a woman who enters the room, and there is a man on the prowl. And if he is a sketchy individual, how you show up matters so much in this moment, because it's almost as if our fear or our doubts or our skepticism about ourselves is actually a pheromone or a signal for some people. And so, that doubt that we have about ourselves, those insecurities that we have about ourselves, we can wear them on us in a way that makes the precursor something that is like a beacon or a light, to those who may not mean us well. right? And so it is in that damage. And I can say it like this. I believe that, when we are coming into a relationship or coming into even a courtship, that it is okay to be transparent, but it has to be up into a point, because I made this mistake one time. I'm like, listen, I am just getting out of this. I'm just getting out of that. This happened in X, Y, and Z. And I think that if nothing else, because it should have been too much for me, it was actually too much for them. Right. And not that it stopped anything, right, but that all of our scars, everybody can't wear them for us. They are personal to us. They are things that we can share within our communal tribe of women, and that once we have the foundation of trust and the friendship established between us, hopefully our partners are strong enough to carry us, through the things that we've been through. But I think that some things are actually private that we should not have to share with other individuals if we're not comfortable sharing them. And I'm saying all of that to say that some people can use the things that you have come out of to pull you back into them. So it's kind of like the enemy. Used to tell people as I was teaching that sometimes it is kind of like those ouch points for you that you acknowledge are the very things that help other people know where to take aim at. So my arm is hurt. If I'm going to be in a battle of any kind, somebody would just keep taking aim at my arm, right? That's the thing that's the weakest in my sphere of existing. And so what better way, to have an edge over them than to know that. And so when we come into this thing, if we have someone or a potential suitor who is kind of compassionate and understanding, and they have a heart towards things, then your revelation is golden. But if you have someone who is in a predatory state, or even someone who's just immature, who doesn't know how to handle the whole woman that you are, they might likely have the tendency to actually use those things against you. So you might say, I came out of a bad relationship, X, Y, and Z, and they use that the first time you get into the argument. That's why X, Y, and Z happened, or I knew you was crazy because you said X, Y, and Z, before. Now, I don't want to say that is the immaturity of everybody, right? But I've had, individuals come to say things like this to me. I'm trying to think back in my Rolodex to see if this is what, I experienced. But I think that sometimes we can pull toxicity to us. We can pull dysfunction to us. And the way that we do that is in our brokenness. So one thing that we want to do, so we often don't realize that we're dealing with voids, right? We want to feel validated. We want to feel accepted. We want to feel, appealing. We want to feel like we are capable of being loved. We want all of those things. And the more that we grab for them, the more that we, vie for them, the more that they escape us. Is what I'm trying to say. And so you want to get to this place of where the only love that you actually need, the one thing that actually fuels your day, the thing that energizes you, is actually the pure very essence of you knowing that you are your best self and that you are confident and happy with the woman that you have become. And anything that's going to drag you out of that, you have to step away from. You have to get there. Even if it means sometimes that we are alone, we have to get there until, we find the right ones that are going to add instead of subtract. So we are adding, we are multiplying, but never do we want to be in a situation where there is a divide. Right. And so we have to get to that place of where we understand that the red flags aren't just decorations. That they are actually, a beacon or a light, of guidance for you. That those things that look, small now actually begin to snowball later, and they become these big things, these big drawn out things. And just like the women and the beautiful creatures, if we are surrounded and engulfed, in those darker things or the darker energies, sometimes those things will consume us. Sometimes we don't always, like the phoenix rise, to our best self after being in the middle of ash, but sometimes they are a detriment to us. We don't necessarily, we need to understand that just because the world says that it needs to mishandle us or handle us roughly or view us in a certain light, that we view ourselves that way. And I want to say that we have to adopt that for ourselves, woman to woman. Like, we have to get to this place of understanding that we are not each other's enemy. We are our greatest enemy. We are each other's best and greatest asset. There is nothing more pretty than a woman who can compliment another woman. There is nothing greater than a woman who can cheer on another woman. At the end of the day, if we get to this point of, if we help someone else strap up their boots, they can help us pull up ours. And so I think that if nothing else, it took me a long time, outside of, I've always been a girl's girl, right? I think that when it was that, darkness ushered me, doubt ushered me. I think that sometimes people can plant seeds, that will talk us out of the things that we already know. But that is how I can say that we need to recall who we are, recall who other people are to us, because a play, there can be a play on us that undermines, the relationships or our very own being. Right? So not to be negative, but we want to understand who it is that we are as women and how we can progress, as women. That because we understand that these men have their boy camaraderie. They are groomed, right, to be in each other's company and enhancing each other and working together towards a thing in order to accomplish. Whereas we as women, we see each other as an endangered species or the enemy within. We have more of this skepticism towards a woman, more receiving towards a man than we are of a woman. And it is all by design. And so since my battery is about to die and I don't know where my charger is, I'm going to end it here. And that is that you are, the light of the world, that those things that history dictates and predicates about you is not true, that without you, the world does not exist. Without you, society doesn't really truly know how to move. The hand that rocked the cradle is the one that ruled the world, and it will continue to rule it. And you have to understand that there is no one that should be able to come in and diminish who it is that you are or tell you that you're less than what you were ordained to be. Be submissive, be the partner, but also understand that you are the glue and the tie that binds. That without you, the world is crippled and stifled. Okay? And so I'll see you next time on Paragons and Outliers. Meet me for the virtues, the essence of virtue.